Holy Spirit, touch my lips, open our hearts and transform our lives. Amen. My name is Peter Wright and I'm a volunteer speaker for Christian Aid. And for the sermon today, I'm just going to tell you a bit about this year's appeal. I was going to try and base it around some of the readings, but I'm not quite sure how you would work the stoning of Stephen into supporting refugees. It seemed a bit of a challenge too far, but I'm very glad that one of the hymns during the communion is about when I needed a neighbour, were you there? And the creed and the colour and the name won't matter. Christian Aid has been there for refugees since 1945, and we won't turn our backs now. It took a while then, but by 1960 the refugee camps in Europe were closed. The data's changed, but refugee camps are back in Europe today, and around the world they've never disappeared. Oops, sorry. And where do they come from? I'm not sure if you can make out from this map, but primarily the main countries at the moment are Syria, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Iraq, and many other countries around Africa. Why are they fleeing? Well, primarily from war, famine, or disease. The destruction of their homes, schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, fear for their own lives from bombings and targeted attacks, fear for their families, persecution and human rights, and opportunities for their children. Well, on the left there at the bottom you will see a circle which shows the percentages of the 65.3 million, which is right at the very top there, of where 65.3 million people are being housed in these days. And what to me is most disturbing is over on the extreme left there, you may or may not be able to read it out, but 6% are being housed in Europe. 12% are being housed in the United States. That's the richest countries in the world, and we are doing the least. I think it's a very sobering thought. This is Belgrade Barracks in January during a cold spell. The barracks were often in the papers and were used to represent the lives of migrants left to their own devices. There have been between 300 and 2,000 people living in those disused buildings in the middle of Belgrade. And you can see here, if I can get to the screen, that's their washing line. The washing is frozen solid, so you can appreciate just how cold it is. Basic needs are huge as the sheds are open to the wind. There's no electricity, no heating, and they lack facilities of any kind. Most people choose to remain in the barracks as they're a crucial contact point with smugglers and a big information point for the migrants themselves through their informal networks. There are a number of unaccompanied minors amongst the groups, so there are big issues connected to protection. They're described as abandoned in the press in Serbia, but the reality is much more complex. The Serbian government puts massive efforts into supporting them, providing shelter, heating, water, clothing and food to 85% of the migrants in the country. The situation is down to the EU having closed its borders, keeping migrants out and leaving them stuck in Serbia when they closed those borders with Hungary. Sorry, you seem to have just jumped one there. Serbia, Christian Aid work with Philanthropy, an organisation linked to the Orthodox Church. Whilst basic needs are covered by the government, there is still emergency response being delivered. The camps do not provide normal accommodation or living conditions. They were designed for emergency shelter and transit, and they're crammed full. Around 500 people per day are still arriving in Serbia. Philanthropy has a programme of monthly cash allowances to families in the camps, which allows them some flexibility in deciding what to buy and when to buy it, so they have a bit of dignity in controlling their lives. They also provide supplementary food to children and pregnant and breastfeeding women. So in addition to the basic foods being provided, those groups get dairy products, fresh fruit and biscuits enriched with vitamins. And the bottom corner photo shows children queuing up to get their cards, their registration cards stamped so that they can collect those basic products. On the left are 16 and 17-year-old refugees from Syria who have been helping philanthropy as translators and volunteers. On their journeys, they have picked up 4 or 5 different languages, and their Serbian is now approaching conversation level after just 6 months in the country. Another part of the activity is based on early integration. A big issue in the camps is lack of activity, so philanthropy supports vocational training and general life skills relevant to Serbia. Classes are organised for languages, typically Serb, German and English. Laptop stations are provided for both children and adults. Christian Aid supported the refurbishment of a large workshop area in one of the camps to allow vocational training, which included a partnership with a local textile company who provided fashion design skills and sewing skills and also how to use industrial machines. There are film animation workshops run and also events to encourage activities being shared between migrants and the local communities. There's a large Muslim community in South Serbia, so you have the minaret here in the snow, and the imams come in to the camps and support the refugees and also generate links to the local community. The little girl in the middle photograph was in the Presevo camp and walked around with the Christian Aid visitors when they were there. There's always one who walks around, I believe, and she's a real sweetie. It is better to die in a camp than to die in a war. That's what Nezhabar believes. Better to travel for months in rain and snow with young children, to walk until you injure your feet, to risk your children's lives in a plastic dinghy, and to leave everything you know behind. When the alternative is bombs, bullets and war, when the alternative is fear and terror, almost anything is better. Nezhabar is the focus of this year's Christian Aid Week appeal. She and her husband Noor lived in Afghanistan with their 5 children. Noor worked as a teacher, which put him in danger when the Taliban threatened to kill anyone who worked for the government. That threat was carried out on one member of their family whose eyes were gouged out before he was killed. Faced with that, the threats, bombs, war at home, they chose to try and find something better. Noor says, "It was like suicide for us, but we took the decision it is better to die here than to die in the war." So they've arrived in Greece. They left everything behind and risked the difficult and dangerous journey. But all they have now is a tent. This place was nice as a holiday destination. It's not a nice place now. It's a refugee camp. There's no other protection against rain or snow, heat and cold than this tent. They expected to be here for just 10 days, but after more than 7 months since the borders were shut, there's still no end in sight. There's no school for their children. They have no idea what is going to happen next. Christian Aid's partner, IOCC, are offering to help in this semi-permanent home with food supplies, blankets, stoves so that people can cook their own food, and they offer psychological help for many with the traumas they have faced on their journeys. There are around 50,000 refugees stranded in Greece following the closing of borders. And I don't know if you saw at the weekend, the BBC reported that numbers are now picking up, making the crossing of the Mediterranean, with just 7,000 coming over last weekend alone. Throughout it all, Nezhabar has desperately wanted what is best for her children, but the circumstances make it very difficult. Sudai, their youngest child, is 5, but looks much younger. He hasn't been growing as he should. His abdomen is swollen, and they don't know what's wrong with him. The only doctor in the refugee camp is Greek. But because of the language barrier, they haven't been able to explain that Sudai is much older than he looks. Nezhabar's strength and steadiness make her the rock at the centre of the family, holding them together in this difficult and uncertain situation. And she hasn't stopped there. Despite having so little, they have taken in 2 brothers from Afghanistan, Faradun, who is at the back, who's 22, and Farzad, who is 13. They are travelling alone. Faradun was studying engineering, and Farzad was still at school. They got lost in Afghanistan, separated from their family, and they don't know whether their parents or their siblings are alive or where they are. Farzad fell out of the boat on the crossing and nearly died, but they have found refuge with Nejabar's family as they wait for news of their own. Faradun said, "We have to be hopeful. It's not only about me. Every single person here is hoping that one day the borders will open and everybody will be able to go to the places they want. Every person loves his country, and I love mine too. I wouldn't be here if there wasn't a war." Nejbar says, "We still have some hope that one day we will get out of here, and we have hope for our children's future. Our wish is to get out from this situation and to be able to go further. We only want a peaceful life." Christian Aid Week was set up 60 years ago this year with refugees in Europe, to work with refugees in Europe in the aftermath of the Second World War. When Christian Aid Week was launched, the situation seemed every bit as challenging as it does today. And Christians responded then in their thousands, giving money, organising events, lobbying politicians, and inspiring others to do the same. One person who will never forget the support Christian Aid Week gave is Theodor Davidovich. He was a teenager during the Second World War and fought in the resistance movement in Serbia against Germany, but the political chaos after the war's end meant he had to flee his country. He lived in refugee camps in Germany and Italy for 2.5 years, in camps just like those seen in Europe today. He says he owes his life to the support of organisations like Christian Aid. And I hope this is going to work.
My name is Theodor Davidovich, and I come from Serbia. I was orphaned when I was 8. I left the school and was given in service to the rich man, where I served from 12 till I was 16. When the war broke out, I got my freedom from the slavery. I fought in the resistance movement against Germany. My brother was on the communist side and I was on the royal side. After the Germans capitulated, the two sides started fighting for the supremacy to rule the country. I was a refugee when I left that country, and I was in camps like you see now in Lebanon and Syria, tents for 2.5 years, from one city to another, from one country to another too. It was the Christians that sent the parcels, the same as it happened now, and I never forgot it. And I feel I owe my life to the cause, to Christian Aid. I vow there and then to do my best as long as I live. And I volunteered to go and collect for Christian Aid. And I appeal to all the Christians, your Christianity is not only to come and pray and sing hymns, is to put your beliefs in action, helping somebody that needs your help. I'm on my way out. God gave me strength to carry on so far, and He has a plans for me.
Theodore is 91 years old now, and he lives in Scotland. He's never forgotten what Christian Aid did for him, and he's out every Christian Aid week volunteering and collecting with his box. It shows how vital the support that we can give is. He's a lifelong Christian Aid Week volunteer. So, can I challenge you all to give as much as you can to support Christian Aid this year? We're doing work in the refugee camps not only in Greece and Serbia, but around Europe and the world, supporting the poorest in our world and helping them to climb out of the extremes of poverty and despair. £5 could provide 2 nutritious meals for a refugee in Europe. £50 can buy a stove for refugees to cook their own food, giving them a bit of dignity. And £285 could buy refrigerators for a community in a refugee camp. A young Syrian man told Christian Aid he sensed a level of hostility towards refugees, which he cannot understand. After crossing the sea at night to reach Greece, he found no welcome and he feels bewildered and unwanted. How can we in Europe, and especially us in the UK, the world's 5th biggest economy, defend hostility towards those who have been forced to leave everything behind? How can we look away and pretend that it's not our problem? There are 65.3 million displaced people around the world. The population of the UK is 65.1 million. Just imagine if today you couldn't walk and find somewhere else to live. We're so lucky to have been born and grown up in a stable and peaceful environment. Others have not been so fortunate, not because of any fault of their own, but being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Imagine, after a horrific journey to save you and your family's lives, being told you can't go on, you can't go any further, you have to wait here indefinitely. Imagine a refuge is now your home. Sadly today, Nezhabar and her family and thousands like them face a similar situation to that Theodore faced at the end of the Second World War. The Syrian conflict is currently the biggest driver of displacement, but large-scale humanitarian crises in Iraq, South Sudan, Yemen, and conflict in Afghanistan and Somalia mean that millions more are on the move. The Bible is full of stories of people seeking sanctuary, and again we're told of God's concern for the stranger in the land. Christian Aid believe it's time for all governments to act to end these crises, and for us all, citizens of this one world, to love our global neighbours so human suffering can be ended. As you leave today, you will be given one of these booklets. It's a 7-day devotional. It's headed, I Was a Stranger. Inside, for each of the days from today, the 14th, through to the 20th, there is a devotional that you can do. At the back is a postcard flicked into the booklet. If you fill that in and put it in the post, it's prepaid and it's coming to Christian Aid, then we can collect all those together and take them down to London to give to the Prime Minister, whoever that happens to be, after June the 8th. Also in there is a suggestion of taking a piece of red string or wool, and as you do each of the devotionals, to think about people that you know that the situation they're talking about affects. If you want a piece of red string, I have loads of pieces here, so do come and collect a piece and take that with you. And again, if you could return that to Christian Aid, probably best to give them to Margaret, and Margaret can get them to me, and then we will give them all into Christian Aid, and they're going to take them down to London and wrap them around either Parliament Square or the Houses of Parliament, depending how many pieces of string and wool come back. So again, if you could do that, that would be wonderful. Tens of millions of people have had to flee their homes, and they need people who are willing to reach out to them across the barriers of race, religion and culture. So please join with us at Christian Aid this week. Let's be there for the refugees, no matter the creed, the colour or the name. It just doesn't matter. They are our neighbours and they need us to be there to help them. So please help us to provide the food, the shelter and the assistance that refugees like Nezhabar desperately need. I just thought we'd finish with a prayer, I don't know if you can read this, but if you can, please join in. Oh, the top bit's back there somewhere. I'll read the first bit. You are the God in whom we take refuge, yet many have been cast off, set into the depths of the sea. Carry on from there. You are the God in whom we take refuge, yet many have had to walk so far, mourning for family and longing for home. You are the God in whom we take refuge, yet many are oppressed by conflict, refuse safe passage and the refuge they need. You are the God in whom we take refuge, so to you we bring our downcast souls. Seated by questions, we refuse to be silent. Be our hope and our help as we seek to provide the answers of welcome and hospitality for all. You are the God in whom we take refuge. Amen. Thank you.
If I can state the obvious, every Christian and